Welcome back to the Coffee Black Podcast. We are here live in Unapologetic Studios, outer space in Memphis, Tennessee. And I'm here with my guy, Peter from Solai Coffee.
Yup.
Yeah, we just had an amazing event yesterday. The White Box party for the new building is crazy. Coffee Black HQ has officially been White Box, and my brother and his family came all the way up from Florida to celebrate with us, man. So we got a really special episode of the podcast today. If you have not had that Fatherland, this is our first Kenyan partnership coffee sourced from this brother and their family's importing and exporting company. You know, we all about that all black supply chain gang. And yeah, we'll be getting into the story of Fatherland, what that means. But first, man, how you feeling, bruh? Yeah, how's the trip to Memphis been so far for you?
Oh, it's been so fulfilling. I'm glad I came and came with family.
Yeah.
Because we spent the first couple of days just touring and soaking in all the history.
Yeah. Y'all went to the Civil Rights Museum?
Yes, we did. On Saturday.
That's fire.
Yes, and this morning actually before the pod we stopped by the church. I Am a Man.
Oh yeah.
You can't do it in one weekend, so we are going to be back.
Yeah.
Yes.
Come on, bruh.
Yeah.
My I don't know if you know, but Renata's grandfather was one of the sanitation workers who was in that strike.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah. So he marched with Dr. King,
Okay,
and
good to know.
yeah, man, it's a special place, Claiborne Temple. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Like it's a really special place
Yes.
in our history. And I think that's a great way to kind of start off. Normally, when we do these podcasts and we have like a supply chain partner, we want to start off with like, you know, how did you get into coffee? How did you start your business?
Yes.
But we were talking to your marketing director, aka Wifey. You know what I'm saying? And she was saying we really should start into like kind of contrasting our struggles and barriers that we face getting into specialty coffee, because I think that is an important conversation, and I think it's one that oftentimes doesn't get like brought up, but I think there's a lot of really great conversation in there. So you know, we'll start off with you. Like, you obviously we're in a city like Memphis, and the context that we're in kind of gives a lot of the reasoning behind, and it shapes a lot the way that I've gotten into coffee and what my goals are.
Yeah.
But that context is not ubiquitous.
Yeah.
Right. And so we each have our unique journey, even though coffee is what unites us. We kind of came from different points.
Correct.
But at the same time, the way that we came into it often kind of mirrors itself in different ways as well.
I agree.
So like, just break down, like, for you, tell us the story of like what were some of the barriers that you faced getting into specialty coffee. Obviously right now you're exporting coffee from Kenya,
Yes.
importing coffee into America, and roasting your own coffee down in Florida and selling that roasted coffee, that's fire.
Yeah.
But I know that's not easy. So what were some of the barriers that you faced over the last 20 years? 30 years?
More than that.
Yeah,
So,
come on, bro. What was it like? What were the barriers that you faced trying to get into this?
So first of all, it's not by choice that I'm in coffee.
Yeah.
I was born when my dad was already doing coffee. 43 years ago.
Wow.
So about in 1983, that's when my dad planted the first seed. So I found myself surrounded by coffee trees, and soon after I came to realize that it was going to be my role to help the family nurture those trees. And, you know, as we came to age, we also started understanding that, you know, for us to go a little bit further than the farm, we had to actually work the farm because it was pretty much our main bread and winner.
Yeah.
My dad was employed by the government. My mom was an accountant at a coffee farm.
Oh, wow.
And where my dad started his career was in central Kenya. And there was a lot of coffee being produced in central.
Yeah.
That time it was a very lucrative business.
Yeah.
But at that time it was very difficult to get land there. So they decided to go to Nakuru, which is north of Kenya, so 2 hours from Nairobi, the capital city.
Yeah.
And that's where they bought land and started planting coffee. So by the time I was being born 4 years later, you know, I'm the fourth born in a family of 5.
Okay.
And we did adopt 2 of my cousins who are, you know, older than me.
Yeah.
So we already found them working the farm, and they kind of nurtured us into it, right? So it's either you are working. My mom had a corn, we call it maize in Kenya, maize mill, where he was, grinding corn. So if you are not working, if you're not at school, you're at the corn mill. If you're not at the corn mill, you're at the farm.
Yeah.
So I thought going to the farm was the easier choice.
Okay.
Because you got out of the farm at 2 p.m. If you went to the corn mill, you had to come out at night when the businesses were closing. So our struggle was different because we would have wished to close school and just play like every other kid. But we were subjected to work just so that we can be able to sustain the farm with the little money that we had and the little proceedings that my parents were getting then at the farm.
I feel that. So you're at the farm, you're at this process where you're getting to know. Did you like it, or was it like something where you're like, mom and dad making me do this, I don't really want to be here, I'd rather be at the crib playing the video game or with my friends, or like what was it? What was your, like, how old are you at this point?
Honestly, we started going to the farm when we were around 7, 8. We were already picking the cherries.
So my youngest, actually my oldest is 8, Maurice, and then my youngest is 3, and then we got a 7-year-old in between, and they hate working in the yard. Like they like, it's one of those dresses like you gotta do your chores. So I'm thinking it's just a kid. You know what I'm saying? Like you gotta go, you gotta pick cherries, and cherry picking is like one of the hardest jobs on the farm. You know what I'm saying? What's going through your head as a 7 or 8-year-old?
At that age, I hate it. Because I know all my friends are indoors somewhere, or back then we didn't have the video games as much, so it was more of they're playing somewhere. And here it's a chore, and mind you, my brothers are bigger, so they are calling on me all the time, and my younger brother. So you guys are slacking. So at that point,
so they on your head. They're like, man, quit being lazy. Come on, get in there. But man up, get in there. You know what I'm saying?
But for them, they're now in high school. So they know that they want to go to college. And if they go to college, they need the money. And they have already gotten to the age where they understand this is where the money is. Right? So it's either you're paying someone else to come in. You have to employ people. But we were just substituting where we can. We never missed a day of school. That was very important for my parents. So this is during the holidays when schools have closed. We are coming in to substitute or to even, just add a little bit more. You know, so we still had our farmers who we are working with. But just to get things going a little bit quicker, we were there to supplement and to be an additional, work at the farm. But I came to like it after that when, I understood. And when spending a couple of days at the corn mill and seeing, I have to be here the whole day. So I'd rather be here when it's a half day.
I feel you. Yeah, I know for me, like when I was younger, I used to have to help my so every summer or every holiday we go out to my grandparents' farm in Alabama. Small farm, like an acre of land. But I remember having to go out and help my grandfather like work in the field, or like they actually grew corn as well. They grew collard greens, we grew cabbage, watermelon, and I hated it, bro. I was like, and much like your older brothers used to get on you, like my uncles used to, you so citified, you don't know what to do out here, like quit slacking, quit crying, don't be a little punk, you know what I'm saying? And I used to hate it, bro. Now I appreciate it because I feel like the more I get into coffee, the more I feel a connection to the land and like the lifestyle. But when I was a younger kid, I definitely was like, I'd rather be in the house in the air conditioning. I don't want to be out here sweating. But it's one of those things that shapes character in you.
That's true.
What I'm saying?
I thank my parents for giving me that opportunity.
Come on.
Because they would have, succumbed to my pressure and just let me, stick back, stay at home. But they nurtured us. They made us look at it not as a chore, but just a responsibility. And it's a responsibility that everybody else had in the community. Mind you, like I mentioned, farming coffee takes a village. You cannot do it by yourself. Not even if you try to mechanize it, there's still going to be that aspect of human hands going and doing a few things here and there. So it was a responsibility that, you know, he was pointing out. You see all these people, they left their houses, they left their farms to come and help us. And now looking back, now I have kids, I have, you know, I have a job, I have employees that I have to look after. I always attribute that responsibility to, you know, those early days with my father nurturing me to understand how to play my role and not complain, but look at it, the greater good it does. For us, it was the harvest. You know?
Yeah. So how much land were y'all working with? Like, y'all moved to like the northern part of Kenya. You said about 2 hours from Nairobi.
Correct.
Because you could get land. So what was that like? What was the harvest looking like? How much coffee were y'all moving at the time?
Yeah, at that time it was. I think they started with 8 acres of land.
Okay.
Because we used to. I remember my mom. They used to get shares like through work where you would, it's almost like a lottery, but you have to pay for it once you win, so you get allotted a certain portion of land.
Okay.
So you pay a little bit money and then you start, you know, adding value to the land.
Okay.
So for my parents at that time it was 8 acres.
Okay.
So since then we have now grown to about 16 acres.
Okay, that's dope. So it's doubled over time.
Yeah, and what we did was, because of the corn business, we had fields that we used to plant corn or maize. And then we started converting those to coffee.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's fascinating. For the context, like for the people who are listening, what is the average size of like a farm in Kenya? Is this like exceptionally large? Is this average? Is this smaller than usual?
We would call ourselves small-scale farmers.
Okay.
It depends which side of the country you are. If you're in Central and you have 16 acres of land, that's a lot of land.
Okay.
As you go north, it's less populated. So people tend to have So people tend to have bigger farms.
Okay.
We consider ourselves a small-scale. Farm, but in the context of other coffee growing regions in Kenya, they consider 16 acres as an estate.
Okay.
So it's in perspective, it's bigger.
Okay, that's dope. That's dope. And like, so you're on this. Just thinking about where we are. You're on this farm. You're working. You're 7. As you get older, you start to appreciate it. You're still in Kenya at this time, correct?
I am, yeah.
So what was the push to kind of leave Kenya and come to the States? Was that something that happened during university? Was that something that happened afterwards? And why did you decide to do that?
Yeah, so this happened after college, actually. A year after college, I got an opportunity to come to the US. And at this point, I had never thought about the US. I had never thought about doing much in coffee. This is typical for any parent in Kenya, modern time. They are trying to push their kids out of the farms because it used to be lucrative, just like I started in the 1990s, in the 80s. And then as we got to the 20th century, it started getting a little bit more saturated by, you know, people who didn't have the farmers at heart. So that meant that the cost of production was going higher because of inflation, climate change, but the prices of coffee were actually remaining the same or going lower. So every parent was trying to scramble what they can, get a check at the end of the harvest and push the kids out of school. What that means is you get some money, yes, but you don't invest back to the farm because all of it is going to paying tuition, right? So my parents, like I said, education was very important to them. They pushed me through college. I did a degree in computer science, majored in mobile programming. So most of my thoughts were getting into the industry and trying to now practice what I learned, right? Then I go to Uganda at some point. I'm working with Huawei in the telecom industry. And then while I was there working with my brother, I started thinking business, right? And I was like, I don't know whether I really want to go the white collar way. I want to start my business. So I go to Kenya actually, and I start a barbershop.
So you call with the I should have got you to line me up. Well, it's crazy.
No, I'm not good with that. the idea, the business idea.
So you're like, I want to be the funder
exactly,
for the business.
Exactly.
Okay, cool.
So I get that started, and I'm struggling. You know, I'm struggling, and I'm like, okay, maybe I need to work a little bit. And at that point, something shows up, and I find myself in the US, and a few years later, I'm in corporate, and I'm learning so much business. I've been given the opportunity to lead a team, and now I'm sitting with people who are making decisions, taking risks.
Yeah.
And at this point, I'm like, I remember those days when I had a business and the things that I was struggling with. You know, they have been forced to make decisions with a much bigger risks. So at this point, that's when I tap into that business mentality, and I'm trying to learn as much as I can. And then during just before COVID, I had started investing back to the farm.
Okay.
Because at this point, my parents are really struggling. Right? The farm has remained the same after college because there's no money that is trickling back. So I'm like, okay, we need to do a few things. And I start now investing back to the farm, uplifting some of the structures of the farm. And then the first year goes by, we take our coffee to the auction. I don't see any money coming back.
So can you explain that real quick? Because Kenya's coffee infrastructure is a bit different than other countries.
Yeah.
And I think this is a great opportunity to kind of break that down. So like when you say go to the auction, what do you mean?
It would be beautiful if we were literally going to the auction, but that's not the case.
Yeah.
So Kenya is structured a little bit different, and it has evolved over the years. In the early 90s, still to date, small scale farmers and even big estates worked through cooperatives that had, you know, the wet mills, and people would take their cherry there. Yeah. And then it would be bulked with other farms, and then after that you start losing control.
Okay.
Right?
So once you take, obviously y'all know coffee is a seed of African fruit. So it gets harvested like you were doing when you were 7.
Yes.
It gets put into these large bags.
Yes.
Right? It gets taken to a mill.
Yes.
And at the mill, what's happening is they're separating the seed from the fruit.
Yes.
Either through a wash process, which I know Kenya is super famous for, like the wash process coffee,
yes.
the SL28, the varietal. And then but it's getting combined. It's not just your coffee. It's a bunch of people's coffee that's getting kind of all processed together. And then what happens at that point?
So at that point, now it's being backed.
Okay.
Because they're now starting, the percentages start kicking in.
Okay.
How much percentage did you deliver to the co-op? Right?
Okay.
And then a lot of activities happen at the co-op. The milling, that part, the community is still very much involved. We were just watching your docu-series, and all that activity at the co-op, at the wet mill is happening. The community is very much involved.
Yeah, okay.
Then after that, that's when the coffee now goes to the dry mill.
So are you paid, is the farmer paid at that point when they drop the cherries off?
They are not paid fully.
Okay.
They're paid an advance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So something little to support you until now the coffee goes to the dry mill. It's booked. We call it a booking. So a certain cooperative goes to this dry mill, and they book, and then they deliver the coffee, and then it goes now through hulling, removing of the parchment.
Yep.
So this seed in this fruit has gone through several processes, but there's still another process that has to go through removing the outer shell that protects the seed. That's what we call hulling.
Yeah.
So when we are delivering,
kind of like an apple. If you ever eaten an apple, there's like a little layer around the seed of the fruit.
Mango is a good example.
Yeah, another great example.
That's
There's like a layer around it that has to be dried and then removed.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I like using the mango as a very good example of illustrating how coffee is a fruit compared to other fruits.
Yeah.
Because we eat that juicy part of the mango. There's the outer skin, then what we eat.
Yeah.
That's what when we are fermenting coffee and wet washing, that's the part that we are removing. And then there's that shell that covers the seed in the mango. Yeah. And that's now what we are taking to the dry mill, and they remove that outer shell, and now you have the seed. That's the seed that we call the green bean. Yeah. That's what now we export, that's what we roast, that's what we consume. Yeah. Yeah. So when they take it to the dry mill, Then there's more bulking if they don't have enough, but mostly they will mill per co-op, right? And then now you're paid based on, the percentages, the milling loss, how much was delivered at the co-op. So those are the percentage that you're paid.
Yeah.
So now you mentioned about the auction. This farmer who delivered the cherry will never even get to the dry mill. So far much distant. Not literally distance, but there now other people have taken over. So that the value chain now starts there. Because
And who are these other people?
so now you're talking about the management at the co-op.
Okay.
Once the co-op gets the coffee to the miller, now the miller takes over.
Okay.
So what has been happening in Kenya is that we have these big establishments that were set up. And these establishments, they are private owned, and they are the dry millers, they are the marketers, and most of the time they are also participating in the auction as another person.
Okay.
So when we talk about injustice, those are some of the things that we talk about. We mention someone controlling each and every moving part. In this value addition.
Wow. And you said this is kind of a new innovation or a new situation. I don't even really want to use the word innovation, but this is new because you're describing in the 90s when your parents were in coffee, it was pretty profitable.
Yes.
Does that mean that they had more participation in all those steps?
They did. And it was mostly the government structures, and the government had the farmer in mind. But as, these people continued coming in, and the government had a hand at that point, allowing them to set those structures and probably, necking away and allowing them to do the things that they were doing.
And these are private entities from outside of Kenya.
Exactly. Yes.
Okay.
So now you take the coffee to this dry miller. He charges you for the dry milling. Then you sign a contract as him being the representative of your coffee to the auction. So they become your marketing agent. Right? So now they go to the auction, they present your coffee. Here's the problem.
Where is the auction at? Is this in Nairobi?
It's in Nairobi. It's called the Nairobi Coffee Exchange.
Now, I'm a black American, bro.
Yes.
I get triggered by the word auction, right?
Yeah.
I'm just yo, the history of, you know what I'm saying? Like, black people working on fields and going to auctions is like not great in this country. But it's kind of, it seems like on a different level, it's also not great in Kenya. Like,
there's a lot of injustice that happens there.
Wow. Okay, so obviously people are not being sold at the auction, so we passed that. But your product is going to auction, but you're not able to represent your own product.
You're not able to represent yourself.
So even if someone wanted to, could they take their own product to auction, or do you have to go through these kind of foreign intermediaries?
Things have changed.
Okay.
And that's why we are here. We are able to export coffee because in 2005 the policies started becoming a little bit more friendly to the farmer.
Okay.
Not easy, but more friendly to navigate the whole certification and getting a license it's not for the faint-hearted. You have to knock on very many doors, but we withstood all that, So I want to explain the auction. So we have this marketing agent who gets the coffee now from the mill. Mind you, they are the one who milled for you. They have the bill for you, and now they're telling you, we are going to represent you at the auction. And they go in, and they don't go with all the coffee, of course. So they go with the samples, and people are bidding for the coffee as they taste it.
Who are these people? Are these
these are your importers? Anybody who wants to buy coffee from Kenya. The local buyers. In Kenya, you're not allowed to buy coffee not unless you're buying it at the auction. Does it make sense?
Nah, it makes sense.
Yeah.
As in, I understand it. It doesn't make sense in the fact that it doesn't seem logical to do it this way.
Yes.
But I'm rocking with you. Okay, so you're not allowed to bring your product, so they bring these representatives are bringing your coffee and they're marketing it for you.
Correct.
Are you allowed to have any input in the way they market it?
So it just depends how much involved you are. and how much educated you are as a farmer.
Yeah.
So think of it, my dad has been farming coffee for 40 years.
Yeah.
So he has a lot of experience. And he's also educated. So he knows the city. He knows his way around these government offices. He knows his way around the auction. Now think about that guy, this farmer, the age of my dad, who has like an acre of coffee.
Like my grandma.
Exactly, in the village.
Yeah.
Barely goes to the city.
Yeah.
All he can do is deliver his coffee at the co-op, and that's it. How is he going to represent himself or have any say on how much his coffee is sold?
But at the same time, this person who has his coffee gets so much say in representing him. So what are they saying when they get to auction? Like, what are they talking about when they represent these smaller farmers? What are these marketers?
Yeah.
How are they marketing it?
So it just depends with who is marketing your coffee. Because I said these are private entities.
Yeah.
And they have a stakeholding on the buying side. They have a stakeholding on the milling side. And they are also very busy at the farms trying to persuade people to work with them. So what they do, they advance you. You know, they throw a little bit.
It's a loan,
at you.
essentially.
Exactly. And then you're committed. That's almost like they lock you in because they're not expecting you to pay until you sell the coffee. But they gotta sell the coffee to pay themselves. So for them, it's more of, think of a foreclosure. All the bank is trying to do is get its money back. It doesn't matter how much they sell the house, whether you bought it at a certain price and you have sold it for, you have paid enough money, right? They just want to get their money back. So these people, when they get to the auction, what happens is that because I'm selling to my brother, I'm on this other side, he's on this other side. He needs the product to come and bring it to the US, to the diaspora, to Europe, wherever. So something called price fixing now starts happening, where people agree that when we are going to the auction, this is the most we are going to buy this coffee. And they all agree. They sit round table the night before and they agree. They cap the price. So no matter how good your coffee is, it cannot fetch more than a certain price. And that's why people see Panama selling for $10 and a Kenya that's cost the same selling for way less. Because somebody capped it. And when I'm talking about price fixing, a lot of people don't get it, especially the roasters, because they have a way of looking at the auction prices and they say, oh, we see the coffee was fetching a good price, $4 at the auction. I think that's a good price to pay the farmer. What if that was the highest score, like a 95 when it comes to specialty? Right? What does it do to all the other coffee crates? Yeah,
which is going to be your 80s, your 79s, your 81s.
Exactly.
So for context, if you don't know, coffee is scored from 0 to 100, right? Specialty coffee generally is your coffees is like 80 and above.
Correct.
Your Folgers, you know what I'm saying? Café Bustelo, that's going to be 60s, you know what I'm saying? 70s. Probably not even the 70s, to be honest.
Yeah. It's commercial coffee.
Yeah, that's gonna be your Nestle, all that type of stuff, your instant coffee. So this is some of the best coffee. Especially coffee is considered to be like the top 1% of coffee in the world. Already off rip, if you're in 80 or up, this is the top 1% of coffee in the world. And you're saying that these coffees in Kenya that are at auction, there's a price cap on how high the highest coffee can be sold for.
Correct.
Which then, if you think about, I used to be a teacher, right? So you grade on the curve. That means everything else is going to be, regardless of how good it actually is or how it was scored in the national market or international market, is just going to have to be less than that price, because the people who are selling the coffee, bro, this is so gangster in not a great way. The people who are selling the coffee and the people who are buying it already agreed before the coffees were cupped, before they were scored, before anyone tasted them, yo, we can't pay more than X, Y, and Z. We can't pay more than this. So whatever it is, just like score it worse or price it worse so that we get our profit margins that we need.
Correct.
Wow. And this is all without the farmer present.
No say.
And these are people who don't live in Kenya, are not from, or maybe they live in here, but they're not from, they just started a business in Kenya. This is crazy, bro. This reminds me of sharecropping.
Yes.
Like this literally.
That's a good example. I had you guys talking about it yesterday.
Yeah, like, so if you're listening, like, sharecropping was something my dad always talks to me about, which is funny because both of our fathers is our connection to this coffee. But my dad would always tell me about my great grandfather, And I'm named after him. My first two sons are named after him. His name was Alexander Henderson. And during that time, sharecropping was basically a way to continue slavery. And so after slavery was made illegal, there was legal slavery that was continued through sharecropping, where you would get these farmers, they would work the same land that they worked as slaves oftentimes, and they would be able to rent or get in advance to be able to get all the materials they needed for farming. So they could get their tools, the seed, if they had fertilizer, animals, they would rent where they stay, they would rent the food, the town, the shop, in these small areas is like a top a shop town or a town shop, you know what I'm saying? So that was also owned by the same person, and this person also was able to take whatever you harvested, and they were the ones who went and decided a price and sold it at market without you, and then came back and told you how much your product sold for, and guess what? Somehow at the end of every year, you're still in debt. Best case scenario, you broke even.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? But most people were told that they were still in debt. And of course, if you think the context, you can't argue with a Mzungu man in 1950s in America, because that's a death sentence.
Yes.
Or not the 1950s, but like the 1920s, the 1890s. You can't argue at this point. Like, so you're just forced to take what they say because there's a subliminal threat of violence. And so every year you're hoping, man, this year, we gonna make a little bit of profit. This year we gonna break even, but you're actually being put in more and more in debt, and it's legal because technically it's just the market deciding the price. It's you're not being forced to be a slave. You're just not making enough profit. Your product isn't good enough. It's not quality enough. That's crazy.
We're in
bro.
2024.
Wow.
Where is the difference? Not there.
Yeah.
You're talking about there being a repercussion in the 1920s when you argued, right? Right now, what's happening in Kenya with this new government that took over maybe 2 years ago is they're trying to do something. And one of the things they did was to scrap those licenses and come up. There was a policy 4 years ago that was passed through, Parliament, where, the marketer is not going to be the miller, and they cannot be exporters at the same time.
I mean, essentially, that's a monopoly.
It's monopoly.
Right? Yeah.
And when this president came over and they were trying to enforce it, now the beating that we're getting now is that they're no longer coming to the auction. So if you look in the warehouses right now, because the government warehouse is the one that has been processing 60% of the coffee this year, because these other people couldn't get their licenses renewed until certain things were put into place. Now they're stuck with that coffee.
Wow. So now basically, because this is again gangster, not in a dope way, but this is just like criminal activity, like cartel type activity. We're like, well, if I can't buy it from my associate, I'm not gonna buy it at all.
That's correct.
That's crazy. And these are the same people who, when they come to America, their marketing points are buy coffee from me for $6, $7, because we're helping farmers. Correct. And you got to pay more so that we can send more money back to these farmers. But these same entities won't buy coffee from those farmers when it's actually on their own terms.
Germany makes the most money out of coffee, but they don't have a single coffee tree, not unless it's a flower in a pot in the house.
Wow, that's crazy.
Yes.
So so I think we just had like this historical excursion when we analyzed the state of coffee in Kenya. And I think this is super important. This is what you know now, but you're fresh out of college.
Yes.
Where we were in your personal story, you're just now getting a corporate job in America. You're like, I'm making a little bit of money. I'm gonna help my parents because all these systems we're describing are affecting their literal livelihood. So right. You're just sending money and donations back home to help out where you can. What was the push for you to say, I want to get into it? Because I'm assuming at that time you weren't aware of all these realities. Yeah. Maybe I'm wrong.
Somehow, because we had already, we have gotten to age. Remember, I'm the fourth born in a family of 5.
Yeah.
So my siblings are running businesses, they're employed. They don't want anything to do with the coffee. Yeah. It's a break-even business, just like you said. Yeah. And if God is a little bit annoyed with us and we have drought,
Yeah.
then it's not a break-even business. You have gone losses.
Wow.
Right? Yeah. So yeah, we are starting now. We understand what kind of business it is at this point, and we are already hearing and seeing that the only people who are farming at this time are the age of my parents. The younger people are not coming back to the businesses. So now you have to work harder. Because in Kenya we have the Indians who do a lot of business, and most of the time that's the inheritance for their kids. For us, you're looking back and you're like, man, there's nothing to inherit here.
Yeah.
So you have to work harder. So now I'm in the diaspora. I have a corporate job, but I see my father is still so much integrated into farming, and I feel at that point it's the weight on his shoulders, because there are so many people who are employed at the farm, and if you're not employing those people one way or the other, you're going to have to help them, right? Because they are looking up to you. They have always looked up to you for that daily job at the farm. So I'm like, we have to sustain this. Like I said, everybody who is farming at this point, it's my dad's age. All of us are out. I have a little bit money, so I'm able to put food on the table and have a little surplus to send back home. So that at that point now I'm starting to think. And I'm also remembering that the reason my dad has stuck with this is because he has always wanted to export his coffee to the diaspora, probably Europe at this point. So he's trying to network as much as he can with the people who export their coffee, but nobody is willing to show him. There's so many gatekeepers, and he's giving up because he's also getting up to age.
Yeah.
And then I look around, and in 2013 when I landed in America, I remember going for a date at Starbucks with my wife, and the bill comes.
Shout out wifey.
Yeah, she's around somewhere here.
Yeah.
And we get the bill. And that evening, Starbucks used to be a big deal to us. It's the biggest coffee brand. And so I'm calling my dad, and we are talking through. I went to Starbucks, and we had a cup of coffee. It was dope. And then we start talking about, by the way, how much do they sell coffee there? And we're breaking down the numbers. In 2013, I think we paid for 2 cups of coffee, like 6 ounces or maybe 4 ounces. It was $7. And my dad is doing the math, and he's like, man, you know how much I get paid for a kilo of coffee? Maybe $5 at most. And this is a cup of coffee. So at that point, there's not much I can do. I'm still trying to navigate, this land and settle. But in 2017, when I started investing at the farm, I knew I had to do something.
Yeah.
And because the first year I didn't get anything, and there was just so much to do at the farm. So I started thinking, what can be done? And then in 2018 we have a tragedy, a damn tragedy that comes and wipes out 48 people from my community.
It was a flood.
Yeah.
Okay.
This guy, Indian, had built a dam and wasn't taking care of it the way he was supposed to, and then we had quite a bit of rain that year, and the dam broke. So I'm trying to fundraise for my community, and man, no matter how much I try, the dollar doesn't stretch because of if you lose 48 people, you can imagine how many people got displaced.
Yeah.
So I look around and I'm like, okay, we do corn farming, we do coffee farming, people have small plots of land. It's going to take a lot of time before the people who are doing corn to get, a harvest, because all the soil has been wiped out. But with the coffees, they withstand. Remember, these bushes used to grow in the forest when they were being discovered. So they can withstand. And I'm like, okay, if these people are going to depend on these few trees of coffee, then they have to fetch a good amount of money. And for them to fetch a good amount of money, they cannot go through the auction, because the auction is all about keeping you at the farm doing the same thing over and over for the same person, because once they sell the coffee, they have to get their money. Remember, they advanced you, so they're going to get their money. By the time you're getting the check, the man has already eaten for the advance. He has charged you a 3% to 5% marketing charge.
Wow.
And it's the brother who bought the coffee. So they are still in business, right? Once it gets to Germany, Europe, US, whatever. So now I start thinking, how can I help this farmer with my presence in the US? COVID hits. Now I have more time in my hands to start researching.
Yeah.
At this point, we have already started looking at the opportunities of getting an export license. My dad knew a couple of people in the government offices, and he's calling them and trying to understand what are the requirements, right? And through this exercise of fundraising for my community, I'm getting more integrated with the community, understanding, the help they need. And by understanding the help they need, I understand that I need much more money. So I need a product that can be sustainable. That's how I chose coffee. And I told my parents, let's go for this license. Let's see a way we can export coffee. Yeah.
Dog, it's a couple things that came to mind as you were talking. So the first one is, just to back up a little bit, you talked about how so many of the youth are like, even your older brothers, like, I don't want anything to do with the farm. Yeah. And I relate to that because much like I told you, like this history of sharecropping in America, obviously we know the history of chattel slavery here. Like for me as a kid, going to, I'm growing up in Memphis, which is a city, you know what I'm saying, close to 1 million people when you include the suburbs. Yeah. And at the time, I'm going to this really small town in Alabama, dirt roads. My grandma has a well, not like in the ocean, a well. I know I'm country, so y'all can't understand what I'm saying, but a well, like where you get water from. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? We used to take baths.
I understand that very well.
Outside, use the restroom, outside. Like we had plumbing inside, but it was limited water. So you had and this was country living. You know what I'm saying? We got chickens and guineas and like, this is what we would do. And there was almost like in my head, I remember this kind of aversion to being on the farm. And I think that's part of why my uncles pushed me so hard to do it, because they understood like our power is always going to be being connected to our land. But for me as a kid who grew up, in the city, in the apartments in Whitehaven, close to Pepper Tree, like it's just an urban context. And the only thing we hear about Black people in farms is trauma. Oppression, suffering, you know what I'm saying? And so like my idea is like anything that's connected to farming, agriculture, whatever, is me going back into that trauma. It's me going back into that identity of being a traumatized person, being a slave, being a sharecropper. And one of the things about my family history that my dad always takes pride in is like my great grandfather was able to find a way out of sharecropping and to navigate out of that. And he was able to start a real business where he could do his own numbers, market his own product. And he had enough land. He had 90 acres. Wow. And so he was able to help other people in his community get on that land too and determine their own futures and be able to enjoy the fruit of their own labor. Yes. And like that was a big thing my dad would always preach. Is like, son, we're not sharecroppers. This is not our history, and we're gonna make sure whoever else is in our community, they're not gonna be sharecroppers either. Like we're gonna build real businesses. And I hated business as a kid. Kind of like I hated the farm. I was an artist and I just wanted to make art and like, but for me it was like, man, thinking about that now, going back on that history, there's almost like a bit of a trickery in like the trauma associated with the land makes you want to leave it. And makes you want to give it away or sell it for next to nothing. But in a lot of ways, you see people moving in, like who are not from our communities and buying up this land. Right? Even the land around my grandmother's house has been bought up and they've like basically cut down all the trees around her farm. These large organizations coming in, they see value even in the trees and the timber and the lumber and saying we can make money off of this. But as a kid, I didn't see that value that was there. I just see the potential for stewarding it and building a business that could actually reclaim what was being stolen from us. And when I hear you talk about this, I'm saying like I think there's an issue just with African people and like especially African youth with like we've been generationally traumatized in our relationship with the land, in our relationship with the fruit that comes out of the land, and in our relationship to our roots. And like part of the unfortunate history of slavery and colonialism is that it almost tricks you into thinking your future is running away from your past.
True.
And you end up running to the countries oftentimes or the places that took that land away from you, or took the profit from the land away from you, and you leave your root, like you said, your parents, right? Or the land around my grandmother's farm, like you leave it vulnerable for people to come in and do more oppression and take. Not only now are you stealing the fruit that's being grown in this land, people can actually come and buy the land for next to nothing and essentially gentrify it. You know what I'm saying? And what is the, I don't know, man, just like what is your opinion on the state of like what it's gonna take to get our youth, you know what I'm saying? Whether we're talking about in the diaspora, whether we're talking about people who are in former colonies, whether we're talking about on the land itself, to be able to return back to their root and begin to like do the work necessary to reclaim the fruit that can be produced there.
I think me and you are already doing it. This is one foot into it. I can't blame those people who feel that, you know, there's trauma. And it's not their choice. When you visit the farms, you see the joy that is there. There is a lot of joy when it comes to production of coffee. There is a lot of passion. You have to be very passionate to do it, right? Because it takes a lot. And then the love for you to continue doing the same thing. Kenya doesn't drink coffee. They drink tea. So you're doing it for another person to enjoy it. So when you combine the joy, the passion, and the love, and then the money is not there. What would prevent this kid from running away from the farm? They will. They will get detached. That's they call our parents this is hobby business. You know, like having pets that or raising goats that you're never going to take to the market.
Wow.
So I've been in a couple of forums because Kenya is really trying to brand its coffee and create awareness and try to eliminate the unnecessary intermediaries.
There was just a big conference that happened with that too, right?
Yes, in Atlanta. The president was accorded a state visit, so they're talking about business, and one of the things that was on the forefront of this visit was talking about coffee and tea as our biggest GDP contributors. And all we want is to be paid a fair amount of money. Doesn't make sense why coffee should cost 3 times less or 4 times less when it's at the auction, and the moment it gets on the sea, the price goes up. That's because crazy. This coffee is being sold when it is actually at the port in Kenya 3 times, 4 times. When you go to these websites where you can buy coffee, and they're telling you it's on show, it's coming in 3 months, and this is the price. You're already paying for a commodity that is in Kenya 3 times, 4 times more than it would have costed at the warehouse.
That's crazy.
Trying to come back, and I know for me, I had a little luxury when I was going back to the farm, because I was over here making a little bit more money than my brothers and sisters at home. So for them, they didn't have that luxury of, they're trying to raise a family and create generational wealth for their family. And if they are dividing it and taking it to the farm, it's a bigger risk for them than it was for me. So I think those people who are able, or they feel that they can stretch a little bit further, they should start looking at the opportunities and the platforms that they have, especially when we are here. We need to start talking for these farmers, because they are not here. And even if they are in Nairobi, which is the capital city, it's a little bit more of a challenge to get such a platform with these big players and these gatekeepers. But we are here, we have free speech, we have the platforms. We need to start talking about these injustices, educating people. I feel like for me, it's most of my energy and my money goes into educating the end consumer about the journey of producing coffee and what it takes to get it from bean to cup, rather than selling coffee, and then it's up to them now to make an informed decision. Because I do not blame somebody who makes a decision a decision without being informed. But now once you're informed, you're educated, and
now you're responsible.
Now you're responsible. And that's why I wash my hands and I'm like, you're on yourself now.
That's between you and the Most High. You know what I'm saying? I think there's an element here, if I'm hearing you right, if we're talking about why or what would it take to get more of our youth reconnected to the land. And this is not just with coffee. I mean, we talked about this, like there's so much. There's corn, there's tea, there's so much. My grandparents growing watermelon, growing, you know what I'm saying, cotton to some degree. You know, there's all these things that like just the connection to the land itself is a difficult thing to reestablish, much less in something like coffee, where you're saying people in Kenya don't even drink coffee. And I want to get into that, but just before we do, I think that like establishing there is an actual economic issue in reality here, that if there's no, despite all the love and the passion that's there, right, and the community that happens, we were talking about the Coffee Makes You Black episode, and one part of the film that Zaire, who's the director, really she sent this actually as the first clip we posted, was these brothers who were on a farm, I believe it was in Cxffee, and they were singing this song as they were like processing an anaerobic fermentation, and it just felt so black. Like it felt like the songs my grandmama was singing when she would go and pick cabbage or greens, and like the songs she was singing walking through the house, and the songs I knew my ancestors sang when they were on fields. It's like that's a part of our roots.
That's the four.
Bro. Come on. That's the thing that keeps you going, that motivates you even when you're tired, that allows us to work in unison. And then we're in a recording studio right now, and that legacy, just the music, has turned into the most popular music in the world. It's turned into hip hop, it's turned into jazz, it's turned into R&B, it's turned into Afro beats, it's turned into so much. And the world has benefited from that, right? But the people who generated this are still not. You know what I'm saying? Whether we're talking about independent artists and the little bit of, I talked a little bit, like I've done 1 million streams as an indie artist. I made $1,200. I'm like, I had spent at least 8 just on the marketing and the music videos and the photography. Like it's just not sustainable, which is part of the reason why, ironically, I got back into an ancestral crop. You know what I'm saying? Because there's an opportunity there. To be able to bring those things together. But if we don't address that economic disparity, all the singing in the world not gonna fix that.
That's true.
You know what I'm saying? Because like it's just like you said, it just doing 1 + 1 is 2, doing the math. It's like this is not a real business, and it's essentially still sharecropping. And we all know that is an unsustainable business model. But let's take a second, because I love to be, I think as an artist, kind of our superpower is imagination, right? And that turns into economic imagination, where we can imagine different kinds of economic structures and plans to be able to kind of build backwards. If the economic part was there, right? If we can find a way to start doing more partnerships like what we're doing, I'm seeing a lot of people do. I think my one of my sisters, I call her my sister, I don't know her in person, but Kahawa, Maggie is doing amazing work where people can tip farmers directly. You know, you got a lot of people who are doing this work to make the economics try to make sense and start to make more sense. And I don't think we're there, but it's a process. But if we were able to get there, right, what would it take? Do you think that would be enough? Or is there a deeper issue? Like you mentioned, people don't even drink coffee. If the economics make sense, is there still more of a creative, artistic, educational, cultural work that needs to happen beyond the economics?
There is some work to be done, and this goes just beyond coffee. We need to build our cultures in a way that we can create sustainable things. And Solai Coffee, what we are doing is we are trying to integrate the community, bring back the youth to the farms, celebrate our women. Our women are the ones who are mostly at the farms.
Is this something like 70% of the work on the farm is done by women?
Exactly.
Wow.
And you need to educate them in a way that they understand what they are doing, why they are doing it, and the outcome of what they are doing. Now, the coffee drinking culture is coming in with the Gen Zs and the millennials. We are seeing more people drinking coffee than tea. And you know why we don't drink coffee in Kenya?
Why is that?
It was so difficult to get the finished product because you have to take it to a dry mill. And remember, when you're taking it to the co-op, that's when you're parting with your coffee. When you get the finished product, it is so expensive.
Wow.
You can't afford it.
So okay, pause real quick.
Yeah.
Okay, catch me up. Because most of our listeners are familiar with coffee from an Ethiopian context where people are like, you got a garden plant, right? And it's you pick the cherries, people are putting it on their metal tin roofs.
Yeah.
You leave it there, and then you just, you know what I'm saying? Get the seed out, put it in the roaster, and then not in the roaster, but in the pan. You grind it, put it in the jabana. Cool. This is not the context in Kenya.
It's different.
Yeah.
We do that with tea and probably ceremonies that we use goat blood. But Kenya it's more tea than coffee.
Okay.
I do remember my parents, and my parents didn't do it as much, but my aunties and my grandma used to do the same thing as Ethiopia
With the coffee?
Yeah, with the pans. So I know I have seen it in a couple of families. It wasn't too evident, right?
Yeah.
They embraced tea more, but now with the younger generation,
Can I ask you a question? So why do you think, like, when did that switch happen? This was something that was happening maybe 2-3 generations ago, and at some point there was a switch to tea, right? Why do you think that happened? Is there an event, a historical reason, or was it just like people just like obviously Kenyan tea is fire.
Yeah.
I got something for you in the backpack from Nadia. But like, what do you think would happen? And then to push forward with the question, what would it take to see a reemergence of the like people culturally associating with coffee as a product to drink?
Yeah. So contrary to what's the history of coffee in Ethiopia, Kenya was introduced to coffee in 1893, hence Kahawa 1893, which I feel like it's a dope way to brand themselves. But it wasn't until I believe it's 1956 when a Kenyan black African man was allowed to farm coffee on their farm. It used to be a business only for the Britons or the people who colonized us.
Wow.
So I think there was that disconnection.
There was no opportunity to really become curious about it, which goes back to this idea of trauma separating you from your inheritance, to be honest. Because if you're traumatized enough, it doesn't matter how much that actually belongs to you.
Correct.
Right? If there's enough trauma there, you'll leave it alone.
You are supposed to leave it alone. Can you imagine? The British are the ones who introduced it to Kenya, right? They brought it from Ethiopia. They found the land was very conducive for farming. Yeah. And that's why we end up competing so well when it comes to quality, right? With Ethiopia. Even sometimes surpassing them. It's because they came, scouted, they were like, okay, we have labor here, we have the land, we have the attitude that we need. But it was illegal to own coffee. So you can imagine if you were caught with a couple of cherries in your pocket coming from a Mzungu farm. So there was that disconnection, but tea was growing naturally everywhere, so they were able to.
So people were able to freely express them, and I think that's what human beings do. We're naturally a curious species. So if we're around something long enough, we'll find a way to consume it, to make culture, to make art, to make music, to make ceramics, which I think you see in Ethiopia because there's a lack of a colonial context there. So the natural curiosity with that plant emerged, but in the context where it's being introduced colonially, it's very difficult. And obviously some people did, like you're mentioning your aunties, they figured it out. You know what I'm saying? So maybe we need to get them on the podcast to break it down. But in a lot of ways, man, in a lot of ways that's not there. So let's think about for the future, and this will be one of my last questions for you, but like for the future, what do you think it's gonna take to start doing some of this like reimagining of who coffee is for? Not just who it's from, but who it's for. And then you could, if you don't mind, sharing a little bit about the project we're working on with, the brother Sean and some of the other guys out there in Kenya.
So I mentioned platforms. And these platforms, what I meant is anything that we can use to propel ourselves. When I was at that forum, I told, you know, the Kenyan government and the people who are there, because I was part of the panel, nobody's going to come and sell your coffee for you at the price that you feel is right. We have to do it, and we have to do it in every way that we can. It could be through music, what we are doing with Sean, and just look at those individuals, you know.
Well, break that down for the people, because they don't, if you hadn't seen, you might not have seen it on Instagram, but break down what you're talking about.
So, of course, you debuted your music a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, maybe. Recorded here.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? Two of the artists here, Unapologetic, Awful and Pro. It's kind of like a Memphis style song. Actually, like for Gold Brew, we were like, what if we made like a dope Memphis style jingle for this product? To your point, what if we sell it ourselves and tell our own story?
Exactly.
And so that song is called Gold on Me. It's out right now on streaming. And I think we released it maybe a month ago. And we had an unexpected connection with that joint.
Exactly. So they jump on the track. These kids, they're just trying to make ends meet in the city, and they dance to tracks, and I am the artists, right? They reach out to you and they're like, can we do a promo?
Yep.
And they just land.
I think it was like $50.
Yes.
And these dudes reached out, and I'm looking at their page, they do juking, so I'm assuming they're in Florida. They're in like, Memphis, somewhere. Juking is like a Memphis style dance that's known. They actually just had the Red Bull like dance off competition, and one of the young cats from Memphis who also did a juking video, he won like the competition, which is crazy. Yeah. But they do the juking video, and I'm like, that don't really, the architecture, like it don't look like they in America. Yeah. But why are they juking? You know what I'm saying? Because it's such a Memphis style of dancing, and they reached out. I was like, this is kind of crazy. So I sent it to you like, hey, bro, is this in Kenya? Like, is there something we could do there? Because that's such a crazy, crazy connection.
Yes. So what we did is to have them, you know, do the same thing at the farm, right? Try to see how we can. All you're singing about is black coffee as a metaphor. But at the same time, it's the product that we are promoting. And you have to do it so that you support us as farmers. Because if you don't sell, then we don't get the produce off the hands of the farmers, right?
And who we're selling to too.
Exactly.
Like I'm trying to, in many ways, you're saying Kenyan people are not drinking coffee. Like a lot of African Americans, especially in my generation, like our grandparents drank coffee, but like we don't drink coffee unless it's like, you know, we're just like, oh, we don't do it. Like my dad got into Kenyan coffee. He tried to give me Kenyan coffee all the time as a kid because he went in college, and I was like, Dad, this is gross. I don't want to drink this, right? And it took a lot of me going out and experiencing coffee in a different context, in a specialty context, to really fall in love with it. And then I was like, man, I gotta do a lot of work to reprogram the narrative in our imaginations in my community, which is why I use coffee as a metaphor in my art, because like I have to retell the story of what this is, because the story that's been told is so colonial, it's so abstracted, it's so gentrified, it's so colonized that there's no way for like a lot of African Americans to see themselves in that story. So music has been a great way to reimagine, to resample what this is and what it's for, and that's why we do music. But I didn't expect it to like be doing that in Kenya though, you know what I'm saying? Like that was kind of crazy.
We were already in the process of creating structures. As Solai Coffee, we want to build a center of excellence, and this center of excellence, we are going to build a coffee school there. Mind you, the guy who we are working with, this young man who took over the farm from the farmers, it's what we have here.
Shout him out real quick. Let people know
this is Edward from Lion Hill. It's a farm north of Kenya.
Yes, sir. Shout out to Edward.
About 3 hours from Nakuru. So he's doing a great job. He has already established his barista training school.
Come on, bro.
We are trying to do the same in Nakuru, so that we start educating people about brewing coffee. And then that skill can be used elsewhere in the city, outside of the country. The other thing is we want to create a center where people can come and educate each other, explore their talents. And these guys are not from my village. But when you sent me my way, I remember when I was talking to them and I was telling them, man, you are my first candidates.
Come on.
And even though you are far away from where we grow the coffee, my reach is for everybody, not just in Kenya. These injustices that we are talking about are not just unique to Kenya.
Yeah.
They are across the globe.
Yeah.
Any coffee producing country you can think of, especially with the small scale farmers, right? So we want to support those guys. We want to make sure that we can use the talent that they have to create awareness. Because we cannot just criticize and call the injustices. We also have to entertain and have people think about coffee in a different ways. Right?
And I think that's the thing about black people, bro. And I think even beyond black people, like human beings as a species, is there's only so far, and this sounds crazy, but like, I just think about what happened with Drake, right? Like, Kendrick did this whole song, Not Like Us. The word not is a negative, right? And like, it blew up around the world. Everybody was on Drake's head. Pretty much unanimous. Drake lost the beef. Drake lets it breathe for a minute and then drops a catchy song with Sexy Red where he's rapping over the BBL Drizzy beat. And the whole world is eating it up. Even we were just making fun of this man, but he made something enjoyable that people wanted to unite around. And I think especially when we're talking about, like, when you make something that people love, like, that has so much more power than being able to critique something. And I think the interesting thing about, like, you guys went to the Civil Rights Museum. Even when we look at the Civil Rights history, art has been such a huge part. Music, and there's a power in art to criticize, to critique, and that's important. We have to hold that. But there's also the same power to unite, to bring people together, to give something to come around and to dance around. And you got to do both.
Exactly.
You know what I'm saying? And so I think with the artistic piece is so interesting because, like, the things we choose to include in our artistic vocabulary and what we choose to make a part of our vernacular has power. And so for me, I want coffee to be a part of it because I feel like it's a way to honor my grandmother, my great-grandfather on my father's side, and the labor and the types of systems of oppression that they fought under. Like, coffee, those still exist in coffee today.
They do.
And so it's a way to address that. But at the same time, there's also an opportunity to reimagine those experiences and say, this is not just something we've suffered under, it's also something that we can celebrate within. And like, that's where those songs like Gold on Me versus a song like Black Like Me, which I think still has it, but I'm like critiquing, you know what I'm saying, what's happened. A song like Gold on Me is like, bro, we're beautiful. We're golden, just like this beverage, just like our music, our art, our history. Like, there's so much dopeness. And you can't stop black folks from coming together around a good time. You put some music on, we gonna come, and food, we pulling up, bro. And if there happens to be really amazing coffee that's ethically sourced and that connects back to the motherland and unites us as a people, we not gonna leave. You know what I'm saying? Like, so that's where products like, you know, Gold Brew come in. Is like, this is an entry point or a gateway into this larger conversation. And I think what's happening with these brothers could be the same thing with Sean. You know what I'm saying?
And the moment they got to the farm, they found my old man there, my dad, and they were so excited to even learn about the coffee. And the first thing they said is, we are going to be back. Mind you, they had driven all the way from Nairobi, which took them about 3 hours, and this was after postponing the journey for a couple of times because of the floods. So now we are talking about people who have been pulled in through their talent. But now they are seeing the coffee, they are seeing the product, and they are like, I need more time. And that's how we are going to attract them back to the farms.
I really think that's what the future is. And I think that when you see what these large international neo-colonial corporations do, they take people like rappers from Memphis or styles like what we've seen Drake do around the world, which is based on music from Memphis, or not just Memphis, but just black art in general, and they use it to market Coca-Cola. They use it to market all these products, which at the end of the day aren't really great for us. We don't own, we don't make any profit off of. Bruh, if anybody deserves to reclaim our art, to tell our stories, and to empower our communities, it's us, bro. And I think that's what I think is going to bring, it paired with the economic advocacy, is what's going to really bring the next generation, bring the fruit, right, of our families back to the root.
Exactly. That's what we were saying, putting the specialty in the coffee.
Come on.
We have to understand that we have to do the work ourselves. We don't expect anybody else to do it for us. And we are going to do it in whichever way we can with what we have. If you're in the studio, if you are in school teaching, if you are in church, just know that you cannot get tired right now.
Come on.
Because that's the only way we can get ourselves of these chains.
Yeah, bro. You got to use your voice and speak up. And we're seeing that happen around the world right now, where people are speaking up for injustices, speaking out against the multitude of genocides that are happening. And I think that sometimes we wait on social media to tell us what to use our voice for. But I think we have to be a bit more curious about our own histories and the issues facing our people, and not wait on there to be a trend happening, but to speak up while it's happening, even if nobody else is.
Correct.
Because that's where the power and the sustainability is. And those relationships, like what you're describing, where we're connected enough to our roots, connected enough to our elders, and they're connected enough to us to where we can know what's going on without needing a global trend to happen. Where we can know, because I was just talking with my auntie and she told me what's going on at the farm. I was just talking to grandma and them, they told me what's going on at grandma's house. And I have a platform, right? I have an education that it took generations for me to get. And I'm not going to sit here and just enjoy the life I'm living without using part of those resources to speak up for the people who allow me to live it like this, you know? And I think that that's what the next 50 years is going to look like. I don't think it's going to come from NGOs. I don't think it's going to come from us. You know what I'm saying? As much as we still need those things, like shout out to everybody doing dope work and advocating, but I think it's going to come from, in the community development world, we call it indigenous leadership. But it's going to come from us speaking up in our own way, with our own voices, through our own cultures and styles. And like that leads to this idea, and this is the last thing I think, of like defining your own specialty. Like you said, like when you you can speak to it, but you were able to see the way we do specialty coffee at Coffee Black, at the Anti-Gentrification Coffee Club.
Different way.
Yeah. You pulled up and I really like, oh, I didn't know y'all was actually in the hood. Like, I thought it was a metaphor, or like y'all was. No, he was like, this is not a shopping center. Like, we really in the hood right now. And like, you met my neighbors, kids we've mentored who are now like leading our company. You met so many people. What was that experience like for you? And how does that lead to this idea of like all of us across the diaspora, and not just even people of African root, but you're talking about anybody who's at a point where you're in coffee or you're in a field in general where you feel like you're not able to own your own story. What does it mean to define your own specialty? So start off with just like first impressions, being at the AGCC, and then tell us kind of how does that lead to this?
It was amazing, bro. It was I you know, when I came, I was really looking forward. Mind you, we had just met at the Specialty Coffee Association, so Chicago. I had met part of the family. And I do follow you guys. I have been following your journey. But one of the surprises that I got is how much community you have around, you know, your business. I met a lot of people, and I can tell you, I shook a lot of hands, and I was telling you, it's just amazing how many people have passed through your doors, right? Oh, as an intern, or they're currently working there. And I could see them, they understand. You know, you have made them understand what you're doing, where you're going. And for me, I felt like I belonged, because back home we have a community. I said it takes a village. You cannot do coffee production by yourself. And now coming and seeing this other community, feel like it's now closing the loop, which has always been the dream for my parents. Remember, for so many years you just parted with your coffee, you didn't know who drank it, whether they liked it or not. But now here I take pictures, I send them directly to my dad, and I'm in Memphis, and this is the guy I've been telling you about, and this is the coffee shop that they're bringing up, and it makes me feel more confident even telling people this is something you can invest in. There's just so much, leave alone the return that you're going to get, a lucrative return, but there's more that it's doing to the community and uplifting the neighborhood. So it was a beautiful moment.
And it's a community of people who, and we were so important because we started our business, people asked us to go downtown, they asked us to go into like Midtown, which is like where the hipstery part, and I was adamant, this can happen in our community. You just have to do the work of actually investing and building those relationships and retelling this story and reweaving our story to connect us back to the root. And like that, but when you do it, it's powerful. And like the craziest part, like I was, you know, investor update, I guess our sales are up 91% this quarter from like Q2 last year, right? Part of that is because we're raising capital and, you know, we've been doing our thing and we've received these awards, but part of it is because our community is showing up. I really think that there's a potential for our community to show up in way as people who like are descended from coffee producing countries, right? And specifically as us as people who of African descent who are descended from where coffee was discovered, right?
Yes.
The only continent on the world where coffee grows indigenously is Africa.
True.
All over Africa.
Yeah.
All the way down to Madagascar. It's all types of different species, not just Arabica. This is our heritage, bro.
Correct.
And if we do the work to reconnect and heal the trauma and really reimagine ourselves back and return to what our ancestors and what I believe our creator intended for us, right? Like my grandma says, God don't make no junk. So if he put black people and black coffee on the same continent, it's a reason, right?
Yeah.
But it takes work. It's not
it
easy.
It
It takes creativity. It takes innovation. But all those things are the recipes for an amazing business, right? And if you do that work, we now have access to an emerging market that nobody else has done the work to communicate with and really market to. So when you see, you know what I'm saying, I'll show you what we did on Shopify yesterday afterwards. When you see what we did, that was because our community showed up. It wasn't because I went to your traditional specialty coffee consumer and put an apron on and like prove that I understand the difference between a dry cappuccino and a flat white and talked about the flavor note. No, it was because I came to our community and spoke to our community with a specialty quality product in a way that we understood.
Exactly.
And that's why I think what we're talking about, okay, so-and-so country doesn't drink coffee. Some people see this, well, this is the reason why it's not feasible for this community to ever have a future in coffee. I'm like, no, that's an untapped market.
Exactly.
And if somebody does the work to recontextualize coffee, and it's literally like planting a root, right? You allow this seedling to be able to contextualize in a new environment, a new ecosystem, somebody's going to make a lot of money.
That's true.
Somebody's going to make...
And it has to be us.
Yeah.
And it's just giving back to the soil.
Come on.
One of the things that I have gotten out of Memphis is I am the man.
Yeah.
You know?
Come on. I am a man. Wow.
And if I am going to build something, I have to be allowed to enjoy it.
Yes.
So you cannot tell me where to sit in the bus. I am going to position myself in this bus.
Yeah.
And I'm going to educate as many people as possible to come and join me in this bus.
Wow.
And advocate for ourselves. And
That's
we're going
powerful.
to do it with what we have. And if your community continues showing up the way they are showing up for you, that means they are showing up for us.
Yes, bro.
It just trickles down and it goes far.
Bro.
And if you guys show up for us who have been there, what we are going to do is we are going to start creating generational wealth.
Yes,
we are going
bro.
to start attracting these people. There's no reason why they cannot own a studio and do music and not do farming at the same time. It's very possible.
Yes,
right?
bro.
When these guys go, their art is in dancing and they want to come back to the farm and they want something to do with the farm.
Yes.
It's not impossible.
Come on, bro.
People own multiple businesses, right?
Bro.
And that we just have, because we have gotten the platform, we just need to continue educating people. And if you're watching out there and you like coffee, you don't like coffee, coffee is for everyone.
Yeah, bro.
When you visit that coffee shop, if you're just getting the pastries, ask them about the coffee, whether they know where the coffee is coming from.
Yeah.
And if you continue asking these questions, then they're going to start investing in understanding how the coffee gets to them.
Come on, man.
And it's not expensive to visit Motherland.
Come on,
to
bro.
go and see.
We
have
just
done it.
Come on, we just
And you
took
still plan.
8 baristas last November.
Exactly.
You shout out to our partners Mir and Vanderbilt, and shout out to Oatly as well for their commitment for that first phase. But this is what it takes, and we're gonna host 9 baristas in the fall. Praying that everybody gets there. When everybody gets their visa, we're gonna speak that, right? When the visas get approved, you know, the opportunity to have this conversation continue is so powerful, bro. And I think this is why, to your point, we have to start defining what specialty means to us. Yes, we know what the cupping scores are, and we can cup well. Yes, we know what the world competition requires for barista competitions and roasting competitions, and we can do that. Shout out to people like Lynn Butler, first African American to win the U.S. Barista Championship and to compete on the world stage. I think he got in the top 6. Shout out to people like Twiz. These are all people on the board for the Barista Exchange Program. First black person to win the World Latte Art Championship. Like, we've done this. We're going to continue to innovate in place, but as we do that, we're also going to redefine it for ourselves.
Exactly.
And what flavors do we want to see in the coffee? What kind of creations and cocktails and lattes do we want to see? Correct. What kind of music do we want to hear in the cafe? Exactly. What is the art we want to see? And I think that as you do that, and my belief is that also is innovation. That also is innovation within the industry. And that's going to lead to not just us enjoying it, but it's going to create the kind of innovation that the whole world's going to enjoy.
Exactly.
And I use hip hop as my case study. Hip hop is created out of the oppression of black people in collaboration with brown people who were here from Puerto Rico and other communities. And yet this thing that came out of us trying to define our oppression turned into the most popular genre in the world.
Exactly.
Everyone enjoys it now. And so I think what is good for black people is good for all people.
For all people.
You know what I'm saying? Because when we make something dope,
Uh-huh.
the thing about our communities where we're so generous, we love to invite anyone in. Everybody's gonna be, I mean, just soul food is another example of like the
Yes.
kind of food we cook. Everybody love it now. And anybody can pull up to the table. The only thing is, don't come in and try to change the menu.
Exactly.
You know what I'm saying? But like
Yes.
anybody's welcome to eat. And I think that that's something that the world enjoys. And what better example of that than coffee? You know, discovered in Africa.
Yes.
But it's at this point, it's taken on a unique identity in so many cultures around the world. And all I'm asking for is give us the opportunity to do that for the world again. But this time on our own terms where we're
Yes.
able to actually benefit from what we've brought to the world.
Exactly.
As opposed to, because that's where true sustainability is. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
Where we're allowed to continue to create, whether it's art, whether it's new coffee varietals, bringing wild species from our continent to bear, whether it's new latte styles, innovation in the types of cafes, business models, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Those things are only truly sustainable when our
Yes.
families are able to eat and
Agree.
enjoy from what they've created and not suffer endlessly.
Exactly.
You know what I'm saying?
Sustainability.
True sustainability.
Exactly.
You know what I'm saying?
More people drinking coffee, we need more coffee produced. And
Come on.
if we don't compensate the farmers fairly, then we'll have to stick to artificial coffee.
Bruh, but the mushroom coffee. You know how many people been asking me about mushroom coffee? I'm like, bruh, don't. Alright, bruh.
Not the same.
But yeah, and it's so processed. I ain't even gonna get into. I'm not trying to hate on mushroom coffee. Enjoy your mushrooms. You know what I'm saying? But I'm just like, one thing is like what we always say is if you don't honor the root, soon you're gonna come back and there won't be any fruit. And that is where I think that's a world, regardless of where you're coming from, nobody wants to see. So,
Agreed.
hey, bro, thank you for your time today.
Thank you.
Appreciate you, bro, for real.
Good pot.
For sure, man. For sure. Hey, well, look, y'all make sure you like, subscribe. Make sure you follow my brother at Solai Coffee. We're going to put the information down below and stay tuned for the next work we're coming. And while you're here, go buy some Fatherland. It is currently 10% off right now on the website for you guys. This is a limited edition offer, but we want you guys to try it. Beautiful coffee. Also a really great coffee for food. I love pairing this coffee with food, but I'm going to talk about coffee and food pairings on a different pod. Talk to y'all soon. Keep the coffee black. We out. Peace.
Peace.
Yeah.